It's time to cook with Susan Beck. Well, it's summertime again. In the spring and in the summer, rhubarb is a common fruit that you can find, maybe in your neighbor's yard even. Usually people have plenty of it, so maybe you can even ask if they would share a little bit with you. Well, here's a stalk I pulled from the garden that I have not yet cut the top off. I also like to cut the bottom root off so that it looks a little bit like this. So I have some unbelievably wide stalks and really long stalks. This year has just been great with my rhubarb. Now, something when you're doing a rhubarb dessert or recipe is to look through your rhubarb and look for any areas that maybe need a little trimming. This has some spots that are just kind of a little rough, and so I'm just going to slide my knife along there and just kind of cut away a little bit of that. Otherwise, as I looked through my rhubarb today, I thought all of it looked really nice and healthy and in very good shape. So I'm going to cut it up. I'm looking for about 3 cups of rhubarb. It's always a little bit flexible on the amount of rhubarb you use in a rhubarb recipe. If you're within a half a cup, either on the whole high side or the low side, it really will turn out just fine, because you never know exactly how much rhubarb you're going to get out of the stalks you pull out of your rhubarb. Now, I mentioned pull out of your rhubarb plant. You always want to pull them, don't cut them. That's why I have this bad rooted end here, is because it was pulled. I just give it a good tug. It usually works best if I put both hands on it and pull from the base of the stalk. You can find out a lot more about rhubarb harvesting and rhubarb freezing if you watch a video that I made about this time last year. Also included in that video from last year is a little bit of ways to use rhubarb and a recipe for making a very delicious rhubarb cake. So let's see how much rhubarb we have here today. I think I'm going to have plenty here. Now, as I approach this piece here, it looks like I didn't cut off a lot of that root piece where it pulled out, so I'm just going to cut that off. This one's also extremely wide, and when I've got those really wide ones, sometimes I cut them down into halves or thirds to make the pieces just a little bit smaller. Have into our measuring cup over here. I don't think I have quite 3 cups yet, but I think I'm getting pretty close. That's what I thought. I have more like 2 cups there. Here's another really wide one that I'm just going to cut in half before I start chopping it. Just pick out your favorite knife. I happen to be using a serrated knife today. This is my favorite knife in my kitchen. Very wide one. Our rhubarb plants have probably been in the ground for, I'm gonna guess, 4 years. We started some new ones, and wow, is it just taking off. It's just been incredible this year. This is my second rhubarb crunch of the year. I like to call this rhubarb butter crunch because we're going to use a stick of butter in this as well. All right, the extras I'll just set aside, and I'll probably freeze those and use them this winter in these dishes as well. It's always best fresh, but it's not too bad frozen either, and it allows you to enjoy some of the taste of summer in the off season. All right, rhubarb is very tart, so into this is going to go 1 cup of white sugar and 3 tablespoons of flour. So the sugar is to sweeten it. The flour, as this the juices come out of the rhubarb, will just kind of help to thicken it on the bottom of the pan. And I have a beautiful dish here. Thank you, Sarah, for my new birthday present. Isn't this just the most beautiful baking dish? This is an 8x8. An 8x8 or a 9x9 pan would work for this recipe. And I am going to give that a little spray and put my rhubarb, white sugar, and flour into the bottom of it. All right, I've kind of got a big stringy piece there that I'm going to get rid of. I really wouldn't want to probably eat that. I'd rather have the other smaller pieces. So those we will just pull out to the side. So there's our first layer of our rhubarb butter crunch. Set that off to the side, and we shall now make our topping. And this is just the simplest recipe ever. I'm going to use that same measuring cup and avoid having extra dirty dishes to take care of. I'm going to use a half a cup of butter or 1 stick, and I am going to just run my knife through it and kind of cut it up a little bit so that I have a few pieces in there. And then the recipe just calls for some other type of shortening. I have done it with a stick of margarine. Crisco is probably my most common go-to. Today I am going to use a half a cup of coconut oil, some type of shortening. Oh, I got these adorable little spatulas also that match my pan from Sarah as well. All right, I am going to use my adjustable measuring cup here, and I have it set at a half a cup. That's going to finish off my coconut oil. And that just simply pushes in, and I can just scrape off any that didn't come out. All right, in addition to that, we're going to put in 1 cup of brown sugar, whoa, there goes my cooking spray, 1 cup of oatmeal, and 1.5 cups of flour. Let me grab my canister over here. 1 cup and a half a cup of flour. My favorite tool for mixing any kind of crumble, no matter whether you're making, a peach crumble or a rhubarb crumble, is this pastry blender. I can just simply put these blades down into it and twist. My margarine and butter, or whatever I would choose to use, needs to be softened. It does not need to be melted. In fact, it does not work out quite so well if it is melted. I want it just soft enough that these blades, there's like 5 of them across the bottom, will kind of just twist down in and cut that up. And it makes truly a crumble out of the flour and the brown sugar and the oatmeal. More twist here, and we'll be set to put it on top. Now, one thing I like about this recipe is there's a lot of crumble on the top of that rhubarb, and who doesn't enjoy the crumble part? Yeah, the rhubarb's good, but crumble's what makes this a delicious dessert. All right, let's clean off those cutting blades. Again, this is called a pastry blender. And the back of a fork has the same kinds of tines, and that works just well too. No need to buy one if you don't think you'll use it very often. I'm not into buying kitchen gadgets that mostly sit in the drawer. All right, on to the top goes our delicious crumble. Get the last of that out of there. Even it out a little bit. And this rhubarb butter crunch is ready for a 375-degree oven. And we'll bake that, let's see, about 40 minutes. You really want that rhubarb to cook down and to get soft. You don't want any crunch left in the rhubarb butter crunch. Crunch comes more from the top, being a little bit crunchy. All right, off to the oven this goes, and we'll have a look at it in about 40 minutes. Well, here it is, our rhubarb butter crunch. We have a nice crunchy topping with that oatmeal and flour and brown sugar on the top. You can see the gooey goodness of the rhubarb that's cooked down below. Let's go ahead and scoop out a serving of this. Yum, yum, yum. Oh, and I can't forget, I also made a little whipped topping. I just used a little whipping cream, half a cup, with about a tablespoon of sugar, and beat that in my KitchenAid mixer for, I don't know, maybe about 5 minutes, and got that lovely light topping to go on top. Ice cream would also taste very good on top of this. I'll post my link for the whipped topping down below, as well as my other rhubarb recipes that I have posted. The top is excellent, and there's so much of that good topping on this. And the tartness, a along with the sugar that adds a little sweetness to the rhubarb part, is excellent. This is a very good way to enjoy some of the rhubarb growing in your rhubarb patch.